Hello, welcome to the Self Learning Podcast by Dr. Shushma Singh. Let us start discussion on Chapter 3, The Story of Indian Democracy. And our topic is the Panchayati Raj and the Challenges of Rural Social Transformation. And subtopic is Ideas of Panchayati Raj. Panchayati Raj translates literally to governance by five individuals. The idea is to ensure at the village or grassroots level a functioning and vibrant democracy. While the idea of grassroots democracy is not an alien import to our country. In a society where there are sharp inequalities, democratic participation is hindered on grounds of gender, caste, and class. Furthermore, as you shall see in the newspaper reports later in the chapter, traditionally there have been caste panchayats in villages, but they have usually represented dominant groups. Furthermore, they often held conservative views and often have and continue to take decisions that go against both democratic norms and procedures. When the constitution was being drafted, panchayats did not find a mention in it. At this juncture, a member expressed their sorrow, anger, and disappointment over this issue. At the same time, drawing on his own rural experience, Dr. Ambedkar argued that the local elites and upper caste were so well entrenched in society that the local self government only meant a continuing exploitation of the downtrodden masses of Indian society. The upper caste would no doubt silence this segment of the population far further. The concept of local government was dear to Gandhiji too. He envisaged each village as a self-sufficient unit, conducting its own affairs, and saw Gram Swaraj to be an ideal model to be continued after independence. It was, however, only in 1992 that the grassroots democracy or decentralized governance was ushered in by the 73rd Constitution Amendment. This act provided constitutional status to the Panchayati Raj institutions PRIs. It is compulsory now for local self-government bodies in rural and municipal areas to be elected every 5 years. More importantly, control of local resources is given to the elected local bodies. The 73rd and 74th Amendments to the Constitution ensured the reservation of one-third of the total seats for women in all elected offices of local bodies in both the rural and urban areas. Out of these, 17% seats are reserved for women belonging to scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. This amendment is significant as for the first time it brought women into elected bodies, which also bestowed on them decision-making powers. One-third of the seats in local bodies, gram panchayats, village panchayats, municipalities, city or corporations, and district bodies are reserved for women. The 1993-94 elections soon after the 73rd Amendment brought in 8 lakh women into the political processes in a single election. That was a big step indeed in enfranchised women. A constitutional amendment prescribed a three-tier system of local self-governance for the entire country effective since 1992-93. Now the next topic is powers and responsibilities of panchayats. According to constitution, panchayats should be given powers and authority to function as institutions of self-government. It thus requires all state governments to revitalize local representative institutions. The following powers and responsibility were delegated to the panchayats: to prepare plans and schemes for economic development, to promote schemes that will enhance social justice, to levy, collect, and appropriate taxes, duties, tolls, and fees, help in devolution of governmental responsibilities, especially that of finances, to local authorities. Social welfare responsibilities of the panchayats include the maintenance of burning and burial grounds, recording statistics of birth and deaths, establishment of child welfare and maternity centers, control of cattle ponds, propagation of family planning and promotion of agricultural activities. The development activities include the construction of roads, public buildings, wells, tanks, and schools. They also promote small cottage industries and take care of minor irrigation works. Many government schemes like Integrated Rural Development Program IRDP and Integrated Child Development Scheme ICDS are monitored by members of the panchayats. The main income of the panchayat is from tax levied on property, profession, animals, vehicles, cess on land revenue, and rentals. The resources are further increased by the grants received through the Chila Panchayats. It is also considered compulsory for panchayat offices to put up boards outside their offices listing the breakup of funds received and utilization of financial aid received. This exercise was taken up to ensure that the public at the grassroots level should have the right to information, opening all functioning to the public eye. People had the right to scrutinize allocation of money and ask reasons for decisions that were taken for the welfare and development activities of the village. Nyaya panchayats have been constituted in some states. They possess the authority to hear some petty civil and criminal cases. They can impose fines but cannot award a sentence. These village courts have often been successful in bringing about an agreement amongst contending parties. They have been particularly effective in punishing men who harass women for dowry and perpetrate violence against them. Now let us move to the next point, Panchayati Raj in tribal areas. Many tribal areas have had a rich tradition of grassroots democratic functioning. We give an illustrative example from Meghalaya. All the three major ethnic tribal groups, namely the Khasis, Jaintias, and Garos, have their own traditional political institutions that have existed for hundreds of years. These political institutions were fairly well developed and functioned at various tiers, such as the village level, clan level, and state level. For instance, in the traditional political system of the Khasis, each clan had its own council known as the Darbar Court, which was presided by the clan headman. Though there is a long tradition of grassroots political institutions in Meghalaya, A large chunk of tribal areas lie outside the provisions of the 73rd Amendment. This may be because the concerned policymakers did not wish to interfere the traditional tribal institutions. However, as sociologist Tiput Nangbari remarks that the tribal institutions in themselves need not necessarily be democratic in its structure and functioning. Commenting on the Bhuria committee report that went into this issue, Nangbari remarks that while the committee's concern for the traditional tribal institutions is appreciable, it fails to take stock of the complexity of the situation. For notwithstanding the strong egalitarian ethos that characterized tribal societies, the element of stratification is not altogether absent. Tribal political institutions are not only marked by open intolerance to women, but the process of social change that has also introduced sharp distortion in the system, making it difficult to identify which is traditional and which is not. This again brings you back to the changing nature of tradition that we discussed in chapter 1 and 2. Now, let us wind up the session and thank you very much for engaging yourself with the Self Learning Podcast.